Welcome everyone to Whimsy Woven Stories. Here, we explore gripping tales of real-life twists. Join our storytelling community.
John met my wife Janie through a mutual friend. He and Janie got along well and began spending time together regularly. John never really threatened me. He was always pleasant and polite. But when you're entertaining someone else's wife, you tend to be wary. They were fun to snoop around while I was at work or away. But as fun as it was, something was missing. They told me about it later. It was a December night when they decided to complete the missing piece of their puzzle. Janie invited John over to play cards after dinner. He arrived around 8 o'clock in the evening, and Janie greeted him cordially. She hugged him, which I didn't think was that unusual. After all, they were friends. First, we sat on the couch, and I got John a beer from the refrigerator. When I returned, John and Janie were sitting together, holding hands and placing them on his leg. "What's going on, guys?" I asked, because the expression on their faces was that of a person who had to tell some terrible news. "Well, darling," she said. "We have something to tell you, but we'd prefer it if you sat down." I did the smart thing and sat down, and she continued to explain. "John and I have had sexual relations for the past 2 months. You see, we had a chemistry that was stronger than both of us, and one thing led to another. We care about each other." She reasoned sensibly. "I care about you too, and I didn't want to cheat on you, so we have a proposal that we would like to propose." John picked up where Janie left off. "You see, we can't stop dating. There's too much to ignore, but we wanted to make sure you were a part of our little date. We will continue to have sex regularly, but you will be there with us, watching. Maybe lend a helping hand here or there," he said, smiling. Janie continued. "Actually, this will be a lot of fun for you. I looked at your search history, and I know you like cuckolding videos." She rolled her eyes when I got embarrassed. "I saw the history on your browser, and you're constantly searching for cuckold relationships, so I know deep down that's really what you want. Honestly, it will be better for our marriage too." John started again. "So all we need from you is a signed document, a simple statement that all parties to a contract agree to these terms." I looked through the papers that Janie took out of her purse. Certain circumstances indicated that she and John were to be cleared of any wrongdoing if the agreement failed, and I decided to pursue divorce proceedings. Some clauses allowed various forms of physical contact, such as kissing, hugging, and even showering and sleeping together. I sat there with a dry mouth, not knowing what to say. Janie said she was right. "Look, I love you, but I also love John and what he can do for me. It's nothing personal, but the way he makes me feel is something I can't just quit. I know he feels the same about me." John nodded his head in agreement. "So sign the contract, baby. From now on, everything will be exactly like this." What was I supposed to do? I certainly didn't want a divorce, but I had no idea how I would react to seeing Janie having sex with another man. I looked at the two of them again. Their hands were still clasped, but now on her hip. Janie looked at me seriously and said, "Maybe this will convince you to sign." I watched as she pulled John's face to hers and began to kiss him. He responded in kind and put his hand on her cheek. Part of me couldn't believe what I was watching. There was my wife kissing another man. I didn't want to admit it, but the longer they both kissed, the more I liked it. I tried to move away and hide the obvious signs, but John noticed. "Look, he likes it," he exclaimed. That's when Janie handed me her pen. I looked at the contract with pen in hand inside. I couldn't hide it from them, and I wasn't sure if it was right. I've studied quite a few stories about cuckolding sex, but it was for a case I was working on. You see, I'm a private investigator, and I do a lot of divorce work in addition to the security company I own. Obviously, I haven't done enough research, so I went into investigator mode, which I'm sure they didn't expect. I pulled out my miniature tape recorder and pressed the record button. Just to be clear, I would like to record our conversation to eliminate any future disagreements, just for my own peace of mind. You understand? There's a lot of legal nonsense here. I noticed that you two have already signed and notarized your signatures. Yes, said John. We just wanted to save time. We knew you would agree with this. Geraldine, our notary, will be here soon to notarize your consent. Then we can start having fun. He beamed like a child at Christmas. Just to be clear, how long have you two been having sex behind my back? I can't believe I didn't understand anything. Janie squeaked. Well, we've been married for 4.5 years, and John and I had an affair for 2.5 of them. And please don't mention it in those terms. He is my soulmate, and we have been making love this whole time. Really? Now I've gone a little overboard. Come on, Richard. Don't get so caught up in yourself. She is a loving enough woman for both of us. I looked at them and realized that my marriage was over. I took a pen, made my note, and stood up. I hope this satisfies you. I showed them the document. I scribbled, "Oh hell no," on the signature. Janie looked at the contract and squealed, "Sorry dude, I'm bad at sharing." Now look here, John. I shook the beer bottle in my hand, pressing my thumb to the neck. I took the contract and folded it, putting it in my back pocket. I then pointed the bottle at my soon-to-be ex-wife and the asshole who used to be my friend and removed my thumb from the neck. A stream of liquid hit both of them directly in the face. I turned around, grabbed my briefcase, laptop, and jacket, and, despite demands to come back here and where I thought I was going, opened the front door. I ran into Geraldine, a notary. Your show, bitch. You must be Richard. Oh shit. I got into my pickup and backed up to the top of the driveway. I engaged the driver and turned the wheels to the left, rolling across the front lawn and through the rose bushes. As I pulled off the curb, I hit the left rear panel of this idiot's Lexus. I know that I acted like a teenager, so sue me. At least he was still alive. I went to her parents' house. I decided that I would be proactive, and although I loved my relatives very much, I was not going to be the bad guy. My mobile phone was blowing up with messages and texts. Finally, the inbox was full and after a while the calls and text messages stopped. I drove up to her parents' house and got out. I pressed the doorbell and soon heard, okay, I'm coming. The light came on the porch, and then I found myself face to face with her father. Judge Thomas Smith did not seem to be in the best of moods. Richard, what are you doing here at this hour? And where is Janie? I don't know where the hell she is. Certainly not on this damn planet. My father-in-law and mother-in-law have always treated me with love and respect, even though they had a son in addition to my future ex-wife. I handed the judge the contract and placed my mini cassette recorder on the kitchen table. What the hell is this? Read this, I said. He started reading and his eyes widened. This is true? He asked. I turned on the tape recorder and it all started from the point where I asked if I could record the conversation so there would be no misunderstandings. While she was playing, his wife was listening to her, and suddenly the robe she had been keeping closed flew open and her hand went to her face. Covering her mouth, she gasped and the robe fell open, revealing the sexy black nightgown she was wearing. Well, I thought, his evening is ruined. He finished reading and looked at me. I don't think there's any way around this, is there? What would you do in my situation? His eyes dropped and he winced. I understand, son. Just then, their old-fashioned home phone rang. His wife answered the phone. Hello? Mother, if Richard is there, I need to talk to him right now. Her father grabbed the phone. About what, stupid? Are you two having any problems? There was a cry in surprise at the other end of the line. Dad, what are you talking about? This doesn't concern you or my mother. This only applies to me and my husband. You should get a contract that spells this out. Otherwise, you've turned this into a family problem. I heard screams and, oh no, they know. Her father said into the phone, goodbye, Janie, and hung up. Dad turned to me and said, go and get a good night's sleep. Then do what you have to do. Just don't do anything stupid, okay? Yes, sir. I'm sorry for everything. It's not your fault, son. Sometimes a snake just sneaks into the garden. I got out, got in my truck, drove to the Hampton Inn and stayed there for a week. I started destroying the minibar, taking off my clothes and collapsing on the bed. I slipped into dreamland. The next morning, I woke up and cleaned myself up again. I realized I didn't have any clean clothes, so I called another good friend of mine, Gerald O'Toole, the one who's not sleeping with my wife, and asked him to buy some fresh clothes from Walmart and bring them to the hotel, room 819. He was a little worried about what was happening, so I told him that I would explain everything to him when he arrived. Oh, and grab some Egg McMuffins and extra coffee. Hurry up, buddy. I then contacted my office and ordered my two best guys to begin surveillance on my wife and her lover. I called the bank and blocked all my accounts, personal and business. I canceled all of our joint payment cards after I paid them off. I then called and cut off her cell phone, which was part of my business plan with the company, and then called and ordered all utilities in our house to be turned off. I called my friend who was a lawyer, and she recommended a divorce lawyer. My brother is very good if you want maximum bloodshed. Tell him I directed you. Apparently, this will be a sure thing and could become a landmark decision. I called her brother, and around that time, Gerald showed up. I got dressed and we bought food for breakfast. I filled him in on the events of yesterday and at the same time told my future lawyer what happened and what I wanted. He told me to report to his office with everything I needed around 3:00 p.m. We will develop a battle plan. Gerald couldn't believe his ears. I can't believe she could do this. Not to deceive, but to offer a written contract, and besides, certified by a notary. Tell me about it. I need to do one more thing. I'll contact you a little later and bring you up to date. No problem, buddy. I never fully trusted John, and I think now I know why. If you need anything at all, Astrid and I are always here. Astrid was his wife for 10 years and always treated me like a younger brother. He left, and I looked in the mirror. I looked terrible. Definitely an improvement over yesterday. I left and went to the bank. I was immediately ushered into the senior vice president's office. I'm not a billionaire, but between my personal accounts and business accounts, it was a significant amount of money. He attacked me. I don't understand your actions. Of course, it's your money, and you can do as you please, but is there anything we can do to change your mind? Guess where John worked? He was a senior financial consultant at a bank, so I placed the contract on the vice president's desk and then turned on the tape recorder. His eyes became misty as he read the contract, but when he realized what he was reading and what he was hearing, his complexion turned from pink to transparent. This is probably some kind of joke. If this is so, then I'm not laughing. I cannot continue to do business with an establishment that employs a man who has sex with my wife behind my back. My voice rose to a low roar, and I'm sure the surrounding staff heard every word. I took the contact from his shaking hand and picked up the recorder. I wonder how many other clients were treated in the same way. You can inform John Samuels that he will soon be served with legal papers. I turned and left. As I crossed his office, I heard him bark. Bring Samuels here immediately, I giggled. I stopped at the stationery supply point and printed out 3 copies of the contract. I thought it best not to show the original to anyone until it fell into the hands of my lawyer. Then I went to my insurance agent. Guess whose future ex-wife worked there? I was led into the office of the owner, Miss Daphne Loria. I thought I heard a muffled Richard as I walked through their office. That's great, I smiled. Miss Loria stood up as I entered and shook my outstretched hand. Richard, good to see you. What can we do for you? She was nervous and looked clearly out of place. I assume you know why I'm here, Daphne. I am canceling all my insurance with your company effective immediately and would appreciate a refund check now. I can't do business with anyone who would hire a lying, cheating woman. Just 1 minute, Richard. Your personal feelings cannot influence how my company does business. I didn't see or hear anything. I threw a copy of the contract on her desk and stared at her. Do you need to listen to the tape recording? She read 3 pages and briefly examined the notary's seal and signature. A trembling shook her upper body. 1 minute, please. She pressed the intercom button. Janie, could you please come into my office now? Seconds later, the visibly shaken, soon-to-be ex-wife entered the office. Yes, Miss Loria. Janie, you're fired. Clear your desk and leave. Immediately, Janie staggered and then lost consciousness. Several people came up and fussed around her. Miss Loria stood up and asked if my decision still stood. I stood up and shook her hand. It's a pleasure to deal with a highly moral professional. I think I can leave my business where it is. I turned and walked out, stepping over my prone ex-wife, and drove to the lawyer's office. My lawyer's name was Nathaniel Sampson. He was a little older than me but looked younger. He was smart. He invited me into his office. He asked if I wanted something to drink and then asked his secretary to get us some water. Now, Richard, I've talked to my sister and she seems to think I'll like it. So what do you have? I prepared the original contract and then turned on my tape recorder. The recording ended and he listened to it, but he seemed more interested in the contract. When it was over, he pressed the intercom button. His secretary, legal assistant, entered. Bethany, take this tape recording and make 2 copies. Then put the original in the safe. Buy Mr. Daniels a new cassette and return the recorder back. He returned to reading and continued to glance sideways at me from time to time. Finally, he put down the contract and looked at me. This is for real, isn't it? No one could come up with something like that. He thought for a minute, then looked at me. Okay, so what do you want to do? I want to crucify them. I want to hurt them so much that they won't be able to get a job or have any social life together. I want to they paid big time. He smirked slightly and smiled at me. I have never seen anything like this in my life. I wouldn't mind being a part of this for any money in the world. The first thing we're going to do is get a notary here and question her. I've worked with her before and I think she'll be accommodating. We will have our own notary here and we will do everything legally. We will then verify the authenticity of the tape and put it to good use. We will insist on a jury trial and beat them up. Oh, I said, I think they're both out of work. I made a little fuss at the bank and at her workplace. Even better if we just increase the pressure. If we get a jury trial, I will take up the case pro bono. I already like it. The fact of the matter is that they have no claims to either slander or slander. We have proof that everything they said is true until we deviate from the facts. They won't do a damn thing. We'll be able to do or say. Light slowly dawned in my mind. They buried themselves. We invited a notary and when they told her everything, she attacked them. She testified that they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. Nathaniel made an appointment with the judge and presented our case. He shook his head and looked at me. I sympathize with you, Mr. Daniels. If I can, I will do everything in my power to make things right. But are you sure you want the jury to hear this? My lawyer intervened. Your Honor, my client wants maximum pain and suffering for the woman who is technically still his wife and the person she was communicating with. He wants their marriage to be dissolved and for her to leave the union with nothing, with absolutely nothing. Okay, counselor, prepare this and let's see if the other parties agree. We notified the other 2 and told them to sign the papers or hire a lawyer. They howled. They were almost broke due to their utilities being turned back on and due to the fact that they were unemployed. But she refused to sign and he expected large compensation. They finally hired some crooks to represent their interests. They didn't mention the contract or the recording to her lawyer. We made an appointment at my lawyer's office. My lawyer checked the recording for time and authenticity of the audio. We were ready. They appeared at 11 a.m. leading her father. I was a little surprised and alarmed. I shouldn't have done this. Janie came up to me as if she was going to hug me. I fought back against her attacks and mocked my former friend. She started by saying that it was all a big misunderstanding and that I had brought holy hell down on both of them. They had both lost their jobs, were almost destitute, and had no prospects for the future. I executed a quitclaim deed and transferred the house to her. But having no money, they quickly went underwater. They tried to put it up for sale but didn't have much luck. She wanted me back in her life, in her bed, and most of all, in her bank account. My lawyer answered the question with a question. Are you still dating Mr. Samuels? Her lawyer said that was not relevant to the discussion. They're just friends. With that, my lawyer pulled out a contract from his stack of documents and placed it in front of the guy. Let's try again. He stood facing Janie while her lawyer read the document. Are you still dating Mr. Samuels? She turned pale and almost lost consciousness. I don't think I want to answer this question. It's too personal. It's okay, Ms. Farrell. You will be able to answer this under oath at trial. I became more and more complacent as I watched their lives fall apart. Her lawyer finished reading the contract and he looked like he was about to get sick. Ty never didn't mention this before, he said. He contacted my lawyer. These are all rumors. You don't have such real evidence. That's when my lawyer pulled out a sworn statement from Ms. Geraldine Schultz, their notary public. He gave this to the lawyer and then assigned a notarized statement from me about what was said and what was demanded. Then he took out a tape recording. It is admissible in court because your clients knew it was happening and willingly agreed to it. My boyfriend pressed the play button and their whole world collapsed. Their lawyer looked panicked. That's when her father, a judge, spoke up and sorted everything out. He slammed his hand down on the table and glared at her lawyer. That's enough, Janie. Mr. Hootie, you're fired. Janie, sign the form and get your head out of your ass. Samuels, I want you to leave tomorrow night. Please note that you are named as a co-defendant in the divorce suit. You better get legal representation before Richard rules against you. And Janie, I understand that you won't get anything out of this. I think that if you go to court, you will get even less. Your mother and I are disgusted by you and your behavior. Your brother refuses to bring his wife and children to our house as long as you remain there. So you better start looking for another place to stay. Samuels is your soulmate, and you chose him over your husband. So maybe things will work out for you, too. I heard him whisper, I sincerely hope not. It turns out that Janie's parents were footing the bill for her legal representation. So she signed everything while Samuels jumped up and ran out of the room. He disappeared from the face of the earth. I have nothing to do with this. 3 months later, I was the only one sleeping in my bed, and I was a lonely man. Well, that was last night. The Jones sisters promised me that they would cheer me on tonight and all day tomorrow. Life is good.
Thanks for listening. Share your opinion in comment section and also do like and subscribe to the channel.